I don't like this. I'm not that happy with the book overall. I mean, it is better than Phantom Menace, but it still is like. Okay, let me just go in order because it's only point two where I'm really going to be going off on this. But the Sith lair on Coruscant is apparently an abandoned building. There's an abandoned building on Coruscant? I was like, this planet is so dense, it's a single continuous city. But you have abandoned buildings? No. I'm sorry. I feel I have to reject that. That is like, no. Um, Welcome home, Lord Tyrannus, the Sith Lord, Sidious. Palpatine replied, "You have done well. I bring you good news, my lord. The war has begun. Excellent. Everything is going as planned." I hate this. This is dumb. This really is dumb. This is not master level conspiracy. Because you set up Dooku as being somebody who would oppose Palpatine. Like, that was how he was described by other Jedi. So presumably then, before he became the apprentice. So you're having to completely betray his character in order for this to be true. And it's just, it is so much more interesting. It would be so much better if, how I described it in the previous video, if it was, I think it was the previous one, maybe it was 2 ago, but anyway, if it was, Dooku figured this out and is a third party, doesn't necessarily know who knows about Sidious, but doesn't necessarily know who he is, and is being a third party, and then gets manipulated. That'd be so much better. That'd be such a higher level that Palpatine is at. Instead, it's not. Instead, it's I set this all up 10 years ago. And somehow, everything literally has worked out. Like, I haven't even had a heart attack that just killed me. I know there's other villains and other things. But I want to reference the manga and anime Bleach, which has a pretty good villain of Sosuke Aizen. Or Aizen Sosuke, I guess. But either way. Who is very intelligent. But also he is very powerful. And the thing is, when I see somebody talking about how, he's so great because he's such an intelligent and master planner, it's like, he's really not a good planner. Like, all of his stuff is basically, here's my goal. Here's the line. Here's a direct line to it, but I am preparing, but I like have something that'll take me that way, that'll get me there. That way, get me there. So it always comes back to that. And it's also, he consistently relies upon his own strength, his own power. Because he is freakishly powerful. But it's like, in one of the later arcs for him, there's the Soul Society arc, then there's technically multiple arcs, but they like also count as just the Irankar arc. In that one, he does like build up his own army, right? And they are powerful and can challenge the good guys. But it's also at one point, two of the three strongest are killed. He attacks to kill, but doesn't end up killing the third. Because like, you've served your purpose. Just comes up, cuts through her. The good guys were struggling against her, and he just comes up, cuts through. Now, he also has two more subordinates who are very powerful and challenging, and it's like, he is at such a level different from them that he genuinely does. My read on a lot of what he does is like, I got these ideas, but you know what? I'm never committed strongly to one of them. That if that fails, doesn't matter. I'm over here. That his whole goal is, part of his motivation is basically he is so powerful he cannot relate to anyone, is his view. So he can't make friends. Because he's just too strong. That there's no one's similar enough to him, liking enough to him. So that also defines him. His strength, his power defines him there. By the way, he also is a master manipulator, but in a way that I would also say, the first person you always manipulate is yourself. But in any case, he kind of cheats, where he has this ability that is referred to as perfect hypnosis, where he can basically make you believe anything, any sensation you're experiencing. He can make you believe in any sensation, okay, that you are experiencing that. It does have its limits, but anyway. It still is. Like, he does these things, and it turns out that that whole army he prepared, that it's a struggle for the Soul Reapers to defeat, but they do defeat them. Slowly, but they do. Was basically just for him to buy time. Was just to buy time for him. But even then, it's still, he manages to have the pieces in place where he wants them to be, and does one thing that makes no sense. But and just how does he swap with Momo? And it's very odd that, but it still is. There's a moment where he literally just like bounces around and cuts everyone down. And it's even like commented that he does so in such a way that they're disabled. They're not dead. They're disabled so they can witness him winning. Whole nother level, because he can always fall back on his power. So he basically seems to have very, very simple plans. It's very simple what he does. So all these other variables don't have to impact him. Because like, nope, just here. And there's also the whole, he always will fall back on his own strength. It's very, very effective. I like that. Palpatine is like doing these high level conspiracies that it's like, yeah, but they're so complex that things just fall apart. I mean, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive kind of stuff here. Because it's like, okay, when did Dooku become Tyrannus? Was the people that potentially had known him for years, even decades, always being lied to? But then he becomes the apprentice where now the lie makes sense? Or was it no, all those things I believed and that everyone around me believed, turns out that's all lie. I'm saying, at least Eisen, and there's another character, I won't name him because that's a better spoiler. That would be more so a spoiler. But he and another character, all their stuff, it goes back like before any of this started, before any of the story started. Okay, so it makes sense, their motivations, and them being so old. 10 years is the most we got here. But there were people who would have known Dooku well before that, but nah, we're going to completely betray the character described for him then, and make him this. And it's also kind of the lieutenant problem, where you need a competent lieutenant to make the captain, the leader, intimidating. Vader is a lieutenant to Palpatine. Vader's such a threat that the fact that he answers to Palpatine makes Palpatine more impressive. If Dooku, this great threat, is so great that Palpatine is worried, but then by Revenge of the Sith, he has figured out a way that now he controls it, even without Dooku knowing. That raises him up. It's like, nah, he's been just controlling this the entire time. It's like, okay, but now we've got all these flaws with the Dooku stuff where it's like, okay, now this isn't so impressive. There's also the whole welcome home Lord Tyrannus, which does mean then, hang on, I think, yeah, I typo, which then has the consequence of, okay, so he did hire Jango. Who is Sifo Dyas then? Who selected Jango, but isn't the one who hired him? Or are we to believe that Dooku pretended to be Sifo when placing the order? Why? I'm saying this is like really stupid planning as well, because it's like, okay, so he had to pretend to be Sifo, because if it was himself, Dooku, when Obi-Wan went there, when any Jedi went there, then that would expose the fact that Dooku does know about the army. It's like, okay, so does that mean that you killed the guy so that this could be hidden? Because it's still like, why would you think, why would he have done this? I mean, why would Sifo have done it sincerely? And if it's Dooku that did this, then still like, okay, in 10 years, Palpatine, you plan to just never have a heart attack? You plan to never have a change of any other kind? I mean, what if something else had happened that threw these plans off? What if the Camino had a problem and now it's like, oh yes, we need another year. It's like, oh shit, the Trade Federation wants to go now. I mean, it's like, yeah, this is a really bad plan because it is too sensitive to other things. But if it was Sifo had suspected something and started this, and just, that's an outlier. That's just over there. Django is a coincidence, which I don't really like. I mean, technically, it could be a coincidence because Django could be professional enough that it's like, yes, I was hired for this, but I'm not telling Dooku that who's hiring me to kill Padme. I'm not going to tell him about that. That's a different client. I don't do that. That would have been fine. But no, we don't have any sense of that. So it's just like you formed both armies over a decade. Well, actually, one army over a decade and another. Also, what if planets didn't want to separate? What if Dooku couldn't get this separatist movement going? Or what if it was Padme realized, yeah, actually, no, they're right. We should be doing. I mean, there's so many ways this could have gone wrong. And it's the whole, yes, the clone army took a decade. The droid army is being pumped out as, the battle is basically raging. In theory, the factory is still running. So it's like, that was over a much shorter period of time. So it's like, way too many machinations, way too easy for something to be thrown into the gears and grinded to a halt. Because it's also, I mean, what would have happened if like, if the Caminos were like, so we got these 200,000. No one's come to collect. It was a Jedi that ordered one, right? Yeah. I guess we load them up onto ships, send it to Coruscant, and ask the Jedi what they want. It's like, everyone would be very confused by that. Because, like, I mean, what would happen if Obi-Wan hadn't gone there? Because it is not unreasonable that they hid Kamino. It's reasonable that no one would ever go there. That the Jedi would never have discovered this. There's also the whole is Dooku the one who erased it from the maps, and also why did no one in a decade update that map? This is what I mean. And this is why you need to be technical, because there are these details in where it's like, this doesn't work out. I mean, it's like, for something like this, I probably would have spent the time to write out the conspiracy completely. Well, at least the major points like that, to make sure things align. And if, as I'm writing, I find questions, I would go back and rewrite, if need be. Or I'd change the conspiracy. Because it would be, like with Eisen, the whole, no, I got a plan here. It's like, all right, I'll just change it to answer these questions. Because you can't let questions like this be there. Because this is a major thing, okay? It's not very prominent in the plot lines as far as like how it is developing, but it is shaping the whole of these stories. And plus there's also, is this something the Palpatine pulled together after the Phantom Menace? Like what was the plan for Phantom Menace then? Just Maul would kill the two Jedi and then what? It actually doesn't make any sense. Or was he figuring Maul would lose, Naboo would lose, so the Trade Federation would have the planet, which wouldn't necessarily provoke the Separatist movement later, to then provoke a war here that this clone army that he hadn't yet ordered would be able to respond to. I'm saying a civil war would have already started by this point, because technically this is what the Trade Federation was doing. Or was he figuring, no, Maul isn't going to die, is going to die, then Naboo will win. But then it's like, why does he want revenge for Maul's death, which is described at the end? None of it actually makes any sense. Because it's like, the plan is so complicated, it collapses it collapses from its own weight. Once you start questioning it, or once you are like, I love this. Asking the question of, okay, what if a character made a different decision? If somebody made a different decision, Palpatine's plan falls apart. Makes it a bad plan. That's why with Eisen, the stuff I was using with Eisen, his plan is so simple, and he can always fall back on himself that somebody choosing something else, it doesn't matter. His plan is simple, he can easily adapt, and he can always rely on his own strength. I'm just trying to think if there's any other good examples in there. That not so much. Because I was just thinking with the whole how he recovered the Hoku. I mean, it's like, well, technically there's the problem of, okay, yeah, kill Rukia, you get it, but he's how does he get there to grab it? But then he has a backup plan there. It's not really explained, okay, well, what could he do if that failed as well? So like in that, yeah, okay, he had plan A and plan B. He didn't have a plan C. Well, in a way he did, but that may have been a retcon by the author. I mean, anyway. What was the last thing? Oh, yeah. Let me fix that typo. I gotta fix these typos. Alright. Do you believe what Count Dooku said about Sidious controlling the Senate? It doesn't feel right, Obi-Wan asks. Mace started to respond, but Yoda interjected. Become unreliable, Dooku has. No shit. Join the dark side has. Lies, deceit, creating mistrust are his ways now. It's like, yeah, which really makes him boring, as I've already explained. But it's also the whole... Dooku said that he learned this by the Viceroy telling the Jedi Council. Which, that could be he learned it, started doing his investigation, and that's how Sidious then brought him into being an apprentice. That's how they met. So, I mean, are we to believe that, no, it was a lie even then? That Dooku was not learned by another means? He just said this even though it's completely verifiable by Obi-Wan. Or do we believe him that actually the Jedi did dismiss it, which I think is reasonable, that they'd be like, I mean, even here, become unreliable, Dooku has. Joined the dark side, lies, deceit, creating mistrust are his ways now. And then nevertheless, I feel we should keep a closer eye on the Senate, Mace put in, and Yoda agreed. It's like, you should acknowledge here that, well, we were told this a decade ago. We didn't believe it. He's repeating that, so perhaps not, but now that things are so serious, nevertheless, I feel we should keep a closer eye on the Senate. I mean, it's like, acknowledge it. But I could believe that this is George writing, not Salvatore. That's Lucas writing. These are the lines from the movie. I think that they do match up exactly. And so they couldn't have that in there. In fact, it's even possible that the whole Dooku being the apprentice here, and I think I kind of went off on this in the previous video as well, that Dooku being the apprentice might have been a Lucas saying, no, this is the case, even though Salvatore was writing something that could be much more interesting, much more intriguing, still serving the ultimate end, that, no, Dooku isn't the apprentice. That would have been a lot more interesting. Plus, adding on to it, this as well, as another one of those things where keeping the plan simple would have helped with Palpatine. Now, Dooku is disrupting it. If it was, he's just a party. Is Dooku could have seen it as, after Maul's death, Anakin's the chosen one. I'm going to get close to him. I am going to manipulate him. I'm going to make him my apprentice. He doesn't know he's my apprentice, but he is. So it's like, then he's just playing the long game, trying to slowly shift him to make sure that he's receptive to the Sith. And then, when the time is right, call on him. That would have been a lot better, because then that's also his goal is ultimately to have a new apprentice, but to defeat the Jedi. Anakin is the greatest way he could achieve that. So him just playing that long game there of being a father figure to him, that Obi-Wan is not, and that manipulation. And that is something that, even though, yes, you're playing long game, but it's a series of small steps throughout. Whereas ordering a clone army 10 years ahead of it, that's a playing long game that is just one major step, one big step. So it's easy to trip there. But this is a lot of small steps. It would have worked. And would have been much more interesting. But no, we don't get that. And it's... Okay, I will give this a speculation. So it's easily could be wrong. I could almost see it being, and I was kind of saying this earlier, I could almost see him being like, that's what Salvatore was writing. And Lucas was like, no, this is what I want for the movie. And Salvatore was like, well, it's your story. I think I would have been one to basically argue if I were having to do that. And this is also probably the reason why I don't. You get the opportunity, take it. But otherwise, I don't like fan fiction, because if you got a story to tell it in your own universe, so it's completely yours, no one else's. But I probably would have been like, no, George, here, let me explain. If we do it this way, Dooku's it makes Dooku a more interesting character, and it does put Palpatine on a higher level. Like, he is truly manipulating things, but he's doing so in a very controlled way. So even if something fails, he's still continuing on. It's not he's always succeeding, it's he's always continuing. That is, in a way, far more dangerous, because even somebody who's constantly succeeding can lose. Okay? But somebody who's always continuing is much harder to stop. And one thought while I was saying that, Napoleon was constantly winning battles until he wasn't. Okay? It's like, how much of Europe, I don't know Napoleonic history as well, as some others, but it's like, he conquered a lot of Europe, didn't he? But then when he tried to enter Russia, the Russian winter helped defeat him. I know I have seen some people point out, don't ever say it quite like that, because the Russians did also do a lot. I mean, don't diminish their efforts, and I don't mean to, but it is still, Napoleon was almost like Napoleon the Great, like Alexander the Great, who never lost a battle. Napoleon was almost that, as I recall, and then he wasn't. Then he was defeated there, and that led to various issues. It was like, don't play it on that, don't play the game in that way. Don't play it in terms of victories and defeats. Play it as just a continuing on. Because that is, especially for somebody that's supposed to be doing this in secret by a subterfuge, that's what the goal should be. It's like, it doesn't matter. Yes, this was a loss, but it doesn't matter. We're going forward. So it makes the person much more lethal. Because it would be like, to reference the fencing in the previous chapter, it would be like, yes, you parried this attack, but here's another. Parried that one, here's another. Parried that one, here's another. I keep coming. It's not oh, you beat me, oh no. It's like, always another. Always parry. It's always, you parried me, alright, well, I'm coming back in. It's a lot more lethal. That's pressing on the person then. But this, it's like, nah, I'm just orchestrating things, so now I'll finally have this one attack that'll do. Oh, you blocked me. Shit. Alright, so we got Revenge of the Sith next, which is, it's still only about a third of the book. But it is written a bit differently, because it seems to have separate parts. Like, we've got Introduction and the Age of Heroes. Then Part 1, Victory. And then I know there's other parts. I just don't remember. We also have titles to the chapters, so it is written a fair bit differently by Matthew Stover, based on the story and screenplay by George Lucas. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how some of that goes. Like, will we see as good of moments as I would like to see? But okay, so I'm just thinking now. Return of the Jedi is still the best of all the the 5 novelizations I've read. Return of the Jedi is still at the top. A New Hope next. Because A New Hope basically doesn't... Return of the Jedi has some flaws, but does some things very well. Like, there's genuinely good writing there. Good storytelling. A New Hope, yes, it does have more mistakes, but for what the story is telling, it does a fairly good job. But the mistakes are, yeah. Yeah, then this, Attack of the Clones, Phantom Menace, and lastly, Empire Strikes Back. Because Empire Strikes Back, as I've described before, was just like... It's dumb. The characters in it are stupid. Like, the whole, what happens if somebody makes a different decision? Well, if somebody makes a different decision, then the whole story falls apart. It clearly won't stand up. Phantom Menace is kind of like that as well, but you don't have the characters all dumb and consistently dumb. No, there are times when they do dumb things, but it's not consistently like that, but it still is fragile. What did I can't think of what I was calling it now. It is late, so flimsy and fragile, is that how I put it? Empire and Phantom Menace are both like that, but in Empire is still worse because everyone's stupid. This also is kind of like that, but it is better. It is not as stupid, and there are some things that are like well told there, like the whole juxtapositions between Anakin's relationships, especially with Obi-Wan, and then other relationships, or his relationship with Padme, or with Padme's family. It's like that all was actually really that was good. That was well written. So it's like I have to give it there, but it still is like it's still in the class down here, while A New Hope and Return of the Jedi are up here. Like they are separate categories to me. So we'll see where Revenge of the Sith ends up being. See you then. And I know I got these videos going for a while. I'm probably going to take the week off from doing more of these so I can focus on some other stuff and watch the movie. I always try to watch them. So I'll watch Attack of the Clones before I start on Revenge of the Sith. It might be a while before I can get to that. Like about 5 days. See ya.